Hey everybody, Vince August here. It is Tuesday, June 16th, and today's hot topic that I'm seeing regards statues and removing certain statues. Now, I have to be honest. When it comes to certain statues in this country, such as those commemorating Confederate generals and soldiers, I don't understand why people are fighting to keep these things up. It makes no sense to me at all, and you have to look at it from this perspective, okay? If you grow up as a black person in America and you have to look at a statue of General Lee, who fought to keep slavery. That would be the equivalent of being Jewish, growing up in Germany, and having to see a statue of Hitler, Goebbels, Rommel, any of the generals from the Third Reich. Or, listen, my parents were raised and were kids during the Mussolini era in Italy, and their farms and their property were raped by Mussolini. They wouldn't exactly want to go to Benito Mussolini High School and graduate from there, and he was one of their own. So, you have to understand there's certain things that are inherently racist and offensive to people. Now, there are other statues we have that I simply don't get and don't understand. Like if you look in the city of Philadelphia, there's probably been a lot of amazing people that have been Philadelphians, but the statue they have is of a guy who is a fictional character, Rocky Balboa. Really? Do we need a statue of Rocky Balboa? And people get offended when this thing gets moved around. I think we're attaching ourselves to things that don't make sense. But then we get to slippery slopes. So for example, Christopher Columbus, very sensitive topic for a lot of people. Some look at him as someone who came here as an oppressor from Europe and took over land that belonged to someone else. He didn't discover, he was a conqueror. Okay, so we start removing statues of Christopher Columbus, but where do we stop? Do we now rename the District of Columbia? Do we get rid of cities like Columbus, Ohio? And once you've done that in America, well then what do you do internationally? Do you tell the country of Colombia, hey listen, the guy you were named after, a little offensive, and until you change your name, we're gonna what, boycott you? See, that's the problem. We start getting into other areas and other things, and you start have to ask the question, okay? Do we take all of these monuments down, or some of them of a different type of historical context? So look, there's a statue of Genghis Khan, a huge statue. Now, this is without a doubt a historic figure that murdered numerous people, okay? If you look at the Mongolian history, not exactly a nice guy. Huge monument, enormous monument. So what do? We say, you have to take this down? It doesn't stop there. The Blue Mosque. This is an unbelievable structure that was created and built by slaves. So do we look at this and say, you know what? No, it's got to come down because slaves built it. It doesn't matter what it symbolizes. It doesn't matter its architectural value. Bottom line, slaves built it. It's a symbol of oppression. We can continue. Chichen-Itza, again, huge tourist spot. This is the place where there were human sacrifices. Literally killed people on top of there. People are like, we got to go see this. Okay. It doesn't stop. Maybe the biggest, literally the biggest symbol of oppression that can be seen from outer space, the Great Wall of China. Look, I don't know many other empires that represent this type of oppression, okay? What do? Do we say, China, take down that wall? Finally, probably one of the most popular monuments, the Egyptian pyramids, built by slaves. Incredible structures that we learned architecture from, that we learned pulley system from. Do we take this and let's say, you know what? All right, now that we know how pulleys work, that's it. It served its purpose. Knock it down. You start getting into a very slippery slope. You look at Italy, okay, a country that a third, if not more, of their economy is based on tourism. People going to see all of these structures. Do we turn around and say to Italy and say, no, listen, Italy, these are symbols of oppression. They are symbols of power and supremacy. They need to come down. It's not always as simple as laying it out. Something is bad, take it down. And then there's people with different point of views. Look, I see around New Jersey and New York City some of the beams left over from 9/11. Now, some will say, well, look, that's a memory of an event, a tragic event in our history. We need to keep it up. Yet you hear people like Ilhan Omar say, oh, just because some people did certain things that day, you know what? That's a symbol of hatred towards Muslims. See, you start getting back and forth. Now, I will tell you this. There are certain things that definitely belong in a museum. You can learn from them. You can learn history. And they're not all good. My father taught me as a kid that one of the things that stood out to him was seeing a German soldier in the Nazi uniform and how intimidating it was and how bright the red sash was on the arm where the swastika was. Now, until I went to Paris, Musée des Armes, I'd never seen a German uniform. And then I saw it. And there it was. And I remember the story my father told me about seeing that uniform and how scary it was. And now the story had historical context. So, before we just start getting rid of all things, again, in another knee-jerk reaction of all things bad must go, anything with any kind of negative connection must be destroyed. Look, you can get rid of all of these symbols. It's not going to change the history. Or what we can do is say, look, certain things definitely need to be out of sight. They are offensive. They are problematic. Others, you know what? They provide some type of context to who we were as a people and how we've evolved. Look, even as a human being, I'll be honest, there are certain things, certain bad experiences that I've had in my life, and I keep mementos from those occasions. You know why? They remind me of how I overcame bad moments in my life. So not all things are to be erased and gotten rid of. Some should be left as a reminder of who we were and how far we've come. At least that's my opinion.